But all right, welcome to
Let's Talk About It
with Lindsay Knapp and
Elise Williams.
Yay! How are you doing today, Lindsay?
I'm doing amazing. How are you?
I'm doing good. Like as I mentioned before, just a little discombobulated, but coming combobulated again.
Oh, all right. I like it. We're gonna coin that word. I like it. Let's all come combobulated.
I like it. Yeah.
Recombab.
Just recombab.
We should do that in yoga. Let's recombob. Say what? Yep.
Why is that not a yoga term?
It's a new yoga pose.
Not
we're
like it.
making it.
And recombab. Instead of namaste, just say recombab.
Oh, see? I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. We're going to have to do that.
So goofy.
All right, thank you for joining us on this side quest, everyone. But today on Let's Talk About It, we're going to talk about privilege.
Yes.
And this was a great idea that Elise brought up. And what came to your mind when you were thinking about talking about privilege?
Well, I was thinking about like how the writers and actors strike is happening. And initially you think, oh, like it's Hollywood, all these people are making money. Like, what are they protesting about? But I follow like several, listen to several podcasts, and I follow several people on social media, and they're just like explaining the whole writers' protest and like the actors' strike, and just explaining, or not the writers' protest, the writers' strike, and just explaining how essentially like the writers, they're just fighting for like a livable wage or like a piece of this big pie that comes from streaming, right? Because these big corporations, they make a lot of money from streaming, but that money isn't being fairly trickled down to the people who are doing the work, like the writers who create the stories, like, for example, The Bear, right? Like the main writer on The Bear was talking about how this was like a very successful show, but he was barely making ends meet, right? When this is going on. And I was reading this other article about these actresses who worked on Orange is the New Black, right? And it's like this really popular show on Netflix. And they were actually, some of them were like working like part-time jobs while working on the show. And people would be like, oh, weren't you on that show? And they're like, yeah, like, what are you doing here as a bartender? But it's like they still had to work because they weren't, getting that piece of that pie. And even like on this one podcast I listened to called, I can't think of the name of it. She was talking about how, because she was like a side character on ER, and saying 5 words an episode, she made more money back in like the early 2000s than she did, as a recurring character on the current HBO show she's working on, Black Lady Sketch Show. And yeah. Like, isn't that crazy? So that's why it, I thought about like privilege, because, we think like, everyone is making, 6-7 figures, right? Acting and like writing, and like they're cushy, but you're, learning from the strike that the wealth isn't being fairly distributed, right? Yeah. And that's where like privilege comes in, because it's like, I don't know, like, like you think, what's the definition? It's a special. That's
all right. Let's go.
Words are hard.
What does Webster have to say? Webster defines. I'll do it.
Thank you.
Webster defines privilege as a special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available only to a particular person or group.
Yeah, and so you think like, oh, you're doing like this protest has helped me learn like there is like not everyone is getting equal and fair treatment or access to what they should have access to. And it's basically like being unfairly discriminated to like the haves or the have-nots, or the privileged and the wealthy versus the non-privileged and wealthy.
Right. So. And then like the people who are doing a lot of the as we would say in the military, the grunt work. You know, they're getting the
Mm-hmm.
short end of the stick, right? And they're having to
Yeah.
work 2 jobs, and they're having to. And I think you mentioned that they weren't getting health care too.
Yeah,
Or
like you have to
yeah,
make at least 26,000 annual K to qualify for health insurance,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, it should be a right, not a privilege to get health insurance. But that's like what they're fighting for. It's just like a little bit more of a livable wage
Yeah.
so they can qualify for things like health insurance and, more money in residuals. So if they're in between jobs, they have like cushion to pay their rent and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Or make a mortgage, pay off their bills, or even like during the pandemic, they're not like going broke because they can't work,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and it seems like there's enough to go around.
Yeah. There should be.
So,
And so that's what brought me to this, because we all have those experiences, like you said, like military members who are low ranking but doing like all the grunt work and they can barely afford diapers,
oh gosh, yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, and then there's that Jason Aldean song that just came out. I think it's like "Try That in a Small Town"
Yeah.
or something.
You
And
know,
that was interesting to me. I think that outlines or shows privilege in a lot of
Mhm.
ways too. Because all the people that saw the song, heard the song, Jason recorded the song. I understand that. As I understand it, he didn't write the song, but obviously he recorded it,
Mm.
and it made it through all these
Avenues.
wickets,
Yeah.
so to speak, right, for it to be released. And nobody, there was no inkling that it would have offend a large chunk of the population, right?
Right.
Or that or that it pays homage to sundown towns or things like that.
Mhm.
So the idea that made it all the way through that without thinking about that is essentially privilege defined. But
Mhm.
like as we're kind of like breaking that down, like how does privilege occur? Where do you go from there, right? Because like what if you are one of the privileged, are unaware that you're one of the privileged, and you do something that could be potentially harmful to another group? Like what do you do? And so like with the Jason Aldean thing, he grew up in Macon, Georgia, which I think the population now is like 150K, and who knows what it was when he was growing up.
Mhm.
So I imagine it was smaller. Certainly probably not the definition of a small town that they're referring to in the song. But, he had I imagine he was educated in Georgia, right? Jason probably grew up in the South. He got whatever curriculum was offered in the South.
Mhm.
And he, as with that education and as a white male who I imagine, I'll go on a limb here and say that Jason has never lynched anyone.
Yeah.
I'll go on a limb and say that he's never been to a lynching. I'll say that I imagine that he doesn't know anybody whose family member was lynched.
Hopefully,
Right?
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
he is personally is likely quite removed from any kind of things that would put him into. He's removed enough to where now he's in this category of privilege, to where when he's singing a song like this, he has even no idea that it might be harmful to a whole group. And for people who, maybe some of our younger kids who don't know what sundown towns are, do you want to talk about sundown towns? Or
Yeah, so essentially sundown towns are, from my understanding, like if you are a person of color, there's like rules essentially where like when the sun goes down, you have to like leave or be indoors or face like, being arrested or harassed or even lynched
Right.
due to,
the color of your skin.
due to the
Really?
color of your skin. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is due to like the Klan or just Jim Crow or just very racist ideology.
Right.
Yeah, and that's it's something that has happened throughout history, and my family's from Georgia, or my mom's family's from Georgia. Like my mom grew up Jim Crow, South Georgia. Like when she started high school, that's when they integrated the schools.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and this is like she was born like 55, so yeah. So like there's his story there,
Yeah.
and like there's even like I mentioned earlier, like the town Forsyth, Georgia, like Oprah did that's like an hour or so between Atlanta and Macon, Georgia. Oprah shot a special there. They have like actually a history of like lynchings and sundowning, stuff like that. So I think privilege doesn't excuse you from being ignorant, right? And not conscious of the stuff happening in your community. And country music is very diverse. It originated from Black Americans. It's like now predominantly white singers and stuff like that. But I think it's just you have to be mindful of your audience and who you are. That's it. Sorry, my brain is like fried.
No, it's all right. It's all right. Your brain can be fried. You're allowed. Plus, I don't think it's fried. I think you're doing great.
Thank you.
But yeah, so like going back to Jason Aldean in the privilege portion. So it's not something that you're right. I don't. It doesn't excuse. Ignorance isn't an excuse.
I guess it's like what you're trying to say is like who didn't like as this song is being like recorded or written and then like the music video is being shot and all this other stuff, like was there no one in the room to say, hey guys, maybe we fix it a bit like before we publish, like there's some issues here that we need to talk about.
Right. And I think that's very like illustrative of a larger swath of like humans nowadays.
Yeah.
Right. So people by either just their upbringing or by choice, even maybe at this point, are unable to see things from a point of reference of someone else. Right. And how that might be harmful to someone else, or how something like that pays homage to such a cruel time in our country. And if I'm looking at it in the light most favorable to Jason Aldean, I would say he was, if I'm looking at it that way, he was blissfully unaware, right? He has been just hanging out in his privilege, not aware of his privilege, just living his best little life, singing his country songs, doing his all little things. And then this might have been just like a bucket of cold water dumped on him. Now it's probably a bucket of cold water that needed to get dumped on him. But something that I think about as I'm kind of watching it develop, and I'm watching people on social media, something that at least I think, and this is, since we're on Let's Talk About It, you get the Lindsay show, you get the Lindsay thing.
The Lindsay talk.
Yeah. It's like dividing a lot of people, right? And so people are they're fighting about it. And so that's where I'm kind of like, all right, you guys, take a deep breath. let's take a step back and let's look at this. Where is the opportunity for, some education, right? Because it's not cool that a bunch of people don't know what a sundown town is. But now that they've had a bucket of cold water dumped on them, what's the next step? And that's what I would hope some people start to think about. So once, if you're upset about the Jason Aldean song, once you're done being upset, think about what that next step is, because there are, there's going to be a group of people in the middle who had the privilege, didn't realize they had the privilege, and now are like, oh shit. and can we create an opportunity or reach across to bring them over?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's certainly that opportunity is not available to some people, right? Some people are, you can only reach the person you're next to,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you know, if you're on the far left or on the far right, you can't reach each other, but the people in the middle can reach each other. So if you're kind of like, you know, left of center or right of center, you can cross that line easily. So if you're left of center, you can maybe reach to somebody who's just right of center and kind of pull them across a little bit. If you can create the space to where you can start to invite a dialogue now.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hoping this is the next step, because you know, everybody deserves to feel how they're going to feel and be mad or whatever. But then let's go to phase 2.
Yeah.
phase 2.
Yeah, phase 2. It's like we educate ourselves and like instead of, you know, fighting with, oh, you're stupid or your mother, you know, just like fight with, hey, this is what a sundown town is. Here's information about a sundown. Sundowning town. Oh, look, Oprah literally went to a sundown town and interviewed the people.
And left before sundown.
Yeah, and left
right?
before
Like if
yeah.
Oprah's leaving before sundown, that tells you something. You
Yeah,
know?
and then here's like the historic information. Like here's like historical facts about the stuff. And then, oh, look, here's books written by people who talk about this, you know, like Nina Simone, she wrote songs about it, like Mississippi Dam or Strange Fruit. You have James Baldwin. You have a lot of great writers who wrote about this stuff while it was happening. So there's historical facts, accurate facts you can get to, you know, educate yourself with. But the whole, like, just fighting on the socials, like, it gotta...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think part of it too is, so as we, you know, we're talking a lot about how, you know, like, I mean, I think it's safe to say we're taking the position that Jason Aldean's song was not favorable, you know, but I think you also have to look at it from the perspective of the person who thinks that the Jason Aldean song is fine.
Like, why did they think it's fine?
Right.
Like, and ask those questions.
But in their, you know, in their life experience, it didn't have any of those things. So now, can we look at it through their eyes? So now they feel, and not the whole swath, but let's just say you know, a section of humans in that on that side are sitting here like feeling very, very attacked. Like, no, I lived in a small town. No, I would never let somebody, you know, be hateful or hurtful to a person of color, you know, that are just like, I'm a good person. Maybe I'm even like, you know, really poor and I'm working my tail off and I'm doing all these things. And now, you know, like I'm proud that I am, let's say, you know, work with my hands. I'm a carpenter, I'm a farmer or whatever I'm doing in this small town. You know, maybe I'm a business owner. I own a little shop and I'm like doing things and I'm working hard, you know, and I'm singing this song because I know I would go to bat for, you know, if somebody robbed a local store in my town, you know,
there's like a strong sense of community.
Right, exactly. Like I don't care who owns it. Like they could be a person of color that owns that store. I'm gonna go beat that person up that stole from that store, right? And so, but they're seeing it. That human might be a genuinely good human who grew up in a way that just couldn't comprehend everything else. And that may be because of their education, that may be because they chose to, but that also may be just because they didn't have time. They were, no, I'm serious. Like if you're like living hand to mouth and you're working hard, or you're like a farmer and you're not on social media, or you're doing this or that, you may not even be looking at anything else. Your eyes are forward. Yeah. You are looking at the ground in front of you. You're only talking to the people in your little small town and you're just cruising. You're not paying attention to anything else. You are so in the moment.
And then it's like you get yelled at for a song that you didn't know was controversial. I mean, I think that's happened to a lot of us. Like you like something. I mean, that's happened to me a couple times. It's like, I remember, because my friend and I are getting ready to go see Beyonce and I sent her this link of these shoes from this website. And she's like, oh, we don't support this website anymore. I was like, why? And she's like, they're pro this and this and that's problematic. And I was like, oh, like it's hard to keep up sometimes because there's so many things that are like canceled or that are, but it's hard to keep because yeah, like you said, you're kind of if you're going through something or you're working or you're just like not paying attention, you're not on the socials or paying attention to the news because the news is like overwhelming. Sometimes you're kind of like, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, because if all you're worried about is whether or not your like your baby cows make it through the night, you are really not worried about it much else. You know what I mean? Like
your baby cows, yes.
Yeah. And I have a lot of family members who are from a small town, and that's why I keep bringing up farming because they were all farmers.
Aww,
so and the small town had like almost nothing. Like it had like.
I keep staring at your crystal.
Oh, sorry. I have a crystal in my hand, everyone. I have a piece of selenite, and I'm just like playing with it. But
not a piece. It is like a chunk.
It's a chunk. It's a chunk. Don't worry, you're safe.
No.
Would you like to hold the selenite?
Oh no, I don't want to like take up your energy. I love it. It's so warm. I like it. I like it. But
when I think small town, that's what I think of. I think of like my grandfather was a farmer. The the town was like population like 1,000. Everybody knew everybody, and there was like a little corner shop where you bought candy when we'd go. Like you just walk everywhere. There's like a grocery store. They had a Kmart till it closed, which was a big deal. Like if you wanted to go to anywhere other than the Kmart, you were driving at least 30 minutes in any direction, and 30 minutes through where they lived through corn and soybeans. It was just that's what they did in the small town. So there was. You either farmed, you worked on a farm, or you worked in one of the shops in town that supported that community. And when I would go visit, my family in those towns, they are oblivious to, because some people really enjoy that small town lifestyle and they don't like the city or even like a city as big as I don't think Macon is a big city, but.
It's like a big
but it's certainly big compared to these other small towns, and so some of them really just enjoyed that, so they're just like unplugged and happy about it. They are unplugged and happy about it. They are not concerning themselves with much anything.
Oh yeah,
they're happy to have gossip being their favorite pastime, and just walking to wherever they need to in town. Like we could walk, like and that's when we were like little, like pint sized. Grandma just let us go. Give us like $3
and go to the Kmart
or down to the candy store. We get penny candies and stuff,
Did y'all have a Dairy Queen?
Oh yeah, we did. We did. We had a Kmart and a Dairy Queen. I don't even remember what the grocery store was called because it was like a locally owned, so it wasn't a chain one. So it's, even the grocery store was just owned by somebody that lived there. So as like we're trying to like whatever the way forward is from this or from the privilege. I think phase 2 is you really got to sit with the other side in their brain, and the same thing for the folks that are that think that this doesn't realize that this song pays homage to sundown towns, right? Like they to sit with that and be like, wow, what if that was you or your kids or your like close friend who couldn't go out after dark. Right.
Yeah.
Because like that, and then they just couldn't. And knowing that even now in like 2023 2023, the KKK is still an alive organization, particularly in the South. Right. So it's not an old wives' tale. Yeah. Right. So this is something that a lot of people are still living. The KKK isn't as maybe as flamboyant, maybe as they once were.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that these hoods aren't in people's houses still, right? That's been passed down from their grandfather to their, even here in North Carolina, there are people in our town here that have got Klan hoods tucked away in their drawers at their homes.
Yeah.
And so it's not, such a far-fetched thing. That this exists. And so my brother died in December, but in November before he died, my brother is like, or was very, very rednecky. Like, we're from outside of Chicago, so you think he wouldn't be, but because we did not grow up in a small town, but when we moved down here to the South, he definitely took on all of the small town vibes.
Oh.
So like he would definitely pass for a small town human. You know, but he loves it. He loves everybody.
Mm.
But, you know, he was at a party with some people, and one of the people took him into the back and showed my brother their clan hood.
Oh, wow.
Right. And this was just like November.
Yikes.
Right. So that was just, so what are we talking? We're in
23.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that was November 2022. We're in July 2023. So that was 9 months ago.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and that, like, you know, as one can imagine, right, that like freaked my brother the hell out. He's like, oh, you know, and then he's texting me like, I'm going to infiltrate and get all the information that I can and all the things, you know, like, he's like, you know, he's coming up with plots and things and all this, that, and the third. But I say all that to say that the idea that just because the hoods are put away doesn't mean that people aren't still trying to show them off from time to time.
Oh, yeah.
Or they're trying to find different ways to bring them out, right? Maybe they're coming out via the Proud Boys, or maybe they're coming out via some legislation in your town, or some redistricting things, how they're districting, or what businesses they're allowing to open in certain areas and maybe not in other areas, or, you know, the accessibility of public transportation, of grocery stores that are near that public transportation.
Yeah.
Right. Or, you know, affordable housing near public transportation. Or if you're like in Sanford, North Carolina, where we are, there is no public transportation.
Yeah, there's
right.
none,
There's just none. You know, I think they've got Colt, which is something for our senior citizens, but nothing for like
regular,
you know, just a regular human, right? But no bus system, no nothing. You just hope that you got a vehicle and that you can work near all the things that you need.
Yeah, or hope it's walking distance.
Right. Yeah. So like, as we're looking at privilege in that light, once you're done being mad, I would encourage you on whatever side you're on. If you like the Jason Aldean song and you're mad that people don't like it, once you're done being mad, you know, so maybe start to think about why someone wouldn't like it. And then if you're on the other side too, and you're mad that it exists,
think about why someone would like it.
Right. Because because all I'm saying is that there's a population of people that we can reach across to talk to.
Yeah.
And certainly there's some people we can't, but you know, let's try to figure out who that is, because at the end of the day, you know, the machine, right? The system that allows people in a position of privilege to continue to thrive and make money is extremely happy that we're arguing about it. Right. So,
and you got to put the insults down.
Yeah. Well, because like, even if you're like, say you don't like the Jason Aldean song, you're like, no, I'm going to fight to the end. And it's like, well, I got you. But like, guess who's winning? Just the people in privilege. It doesn't matter. Like, if you have to reach across and pull people over, because the only people that benefit from us continuing to fight about it is all the people with the money. Because the more we stay distracted and not, you know, banding together as humans, the more rich they get. Like, Jason's making a lot of money right now.
Oh yeah.
You know, like he's making some money, and then the record labels are making some money, and everybody, the people that own the record labels are making a money, and they're happy about it.
They're making money.
Well, yeah, and even like our politicians, I'm sure they're happy that we're just right, like that we're just fighting about anything. They don't even care at this point. Just fight about something, because you're fighting about something. You're not thinking about healing and bringing light to wherever you're at. So sorry. Long-winded.
Oh no, it just, like you said that, and it makes sense. It's it makes me think about, you know, when people were like burning their, like, Colin Kaepernick stuff, and it's like, you know, you already bought it, right? The money's been spent, or you go out and buy the stuff. And I mean, mind you, I'm for Colin Kaepernick. I'm not against. I'm just saying, like, people are doing these extreme things to like protest stuff, but it's like people, like, the people he bought that from already made the money from it, so like they're they're getting richer while you're being upset, trying to show that express your anger over something. But it's like, did you ask like why he knelt, right? Or understood the reasoning behind it versus like being upset that he did it? Like,
You know, it actually just made me think of something. The irony of the whole thing is that whatever side you're on, you're upset for the same reason, which is not what people actually think, right? Like, it's like you're a racist or you're not, or this or that. But both sides are upset because they don't feel heard.
oh,
You know, and as we break that down, why would you even be upset about that, right? You're going to be upset that you were not heard because you don't find any value in yourself.
Why do you think people are upset they're not being heard?
Yeah, but why does somebody feel upset that you're not being heard though?
Because
like people don't. There's some people that don't hear you, and you're just like, you don't care. I don't care.
but
there are some people, right?
you want people to care or
about you, right? And so, but why do I want people to care about me? If I care about myself, I shouldn't care about what people care about.
Well, it depends on the situation, right? Like, you know, like the small town, like the town we live in, it's relatively small, right? But there's no transportation. So you could be upset about that. Like basically I'm trying to say, like, some people want to feel like they're being heard so that it leads to change, right?
Yeah.
Other people want to be heard because they don't understand change and it might be a little confusing or overwhelming, you know, because, you know, they're like the privileged, they're used to things being this one way, right? And it was working out for them. But then as times progress and we're becoming more inclusive and diverse, like you can see it, you know, back to like, I've been watching a lot of TV, but back to TV, if you watch stuff like from the early 2000s and back, a lot of the language and rhetoric that was like acceptable back then is not acceptable now.
No. Yeah,
like
you're not wrong.
Oh yeah, like I watched Mean Girls the other day, and it's like one of my favorite movies. And I watched it, and I was like, some of this would not pass in like our current time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like, you know, there's this scene where like an underage girl is like rumored to be dating like a coach, right? And it's like, oh, that's statutory rape. That is not okay. What?
Right. Yeah.
But you know, it's like times are changing, and sometimes people like emotionally are not catching up with it, and it can be confusing and frustrating. So that's maybe why they're lashing out. And others are like, why aren't you keeping up the pace? Like, come on. It's like, you know, like you're running a marathon and like, you know, someone's lagging behind and you're like in front. You're like, come on, pick it up. And they're like, I'm trying. I need some water or something. Like, no, keep going. And then you know, they
because they're like, I matter too. I want to be heard. You're not hearing me. Please hear me, right? Like just you're kind of like beating the drum. Like I matter. This is what it's like here.
You do matter, Lindsay.
No, I know. So do you. I guess what I was saying is that both sides actually feel the same as they're like fighting with each other. They both don't feel heard.
And it's like important to listen, even if you are not comfortable or agree, it's okay to listen so you can understand and hopefully come to a common ground. Like you said, reach out and see if you can pull someone over, right? Yeah. Because sometimes it be like that. Like I was talking to my mom the other day or today about the name change of Fort Bragg and Fort Liberty.
Yeah.
You know, because it is, you know, it can be confusing, but, you know, I understand why they're doing it. I agree with it. My mom was like, I don't understand why, they're changing history or trying to hide history. It's like, no, we're not trying to hide it. We're just trying to like make things a little bit better. But it depending on, I get what she's saying though, because it's like, it seems like you're trying to erase the bad and only show the good, but it's like you're trying to make things a little bit more inclusive and not be so not
steeped in your privilege.
Yeah. Because like history is changing and history is evolving, and hopefully, it's evolving for the good. Florida sometimes reminds you that it's not, but it's
it'll be underwater soon. Don't worry. Sorry for everyone living in Florida. I have family in Florida. I hope you're not underwater. I love you.
Yeah, it's just, sometimes Florida reminds you like they're not, but it's just got to keep progressing and as best as you can.
Yeah. And then like what caused, Fort Bragg to get changed to Fort Liberty, right? It was a group of people saying like we have not been heard, right? And then they were finally heard, and then the Department of Defense, said, okay, we hear you. This is what we're going to do. And right, and throughout that, and now the people who may be against the change are feeling that too, right? Like that.
Yeah, they're feeling
that they're not heard, right? Like about the about the preservation of history and things like that. And like for me, I'm just like, all right, I don't know. For me, sometimes it's 6 to 1, half dozen to the other. Like the name change of Bragg to Liberty is not going to affect my day to day. And I'm still able to love all my humans
the same way.
And so something like that, like I just wish they would have changed it to something other than Liberty. I'm like, that's just a terrible name. I'm like, couldn't we change it to like Colin Powell? Can it be like Fort Powell?
Fort
like
Powell,
come on, like
cool.
like you're telling me we don't have any cool generals. General Odierno was awesome. Like Colin Powell was awesome. I'm like, come on, man. Like Liberty, that is the most all-American crayon-eating name I have ever heard. I was like, all right. I'm like, come on, man. Like, I love y'all, but y'all have been under the heat too long.
I think it sounds like it was just one of those, we don't want to change this again. Like this, like y'all there should not be any issues of Liberty, right?
Right,
like, yeah, but no, I think Powell would,
like,
Fort Powell would have been a good.
Man, that would have been a great
What
one.
a missed opportunity.
Right, yeah.
But you never know. Skeletons might be dug up about, hopefully not. But things are ever changing.
Yeah.
It's like, I watched The Cosby Show. I grew up watching The Cosby Show. And then you find out all this stuff about Bill Cosby. And you're just like, oh, wow. And so now, like, your perspective has changed and shifted because, like, he was not a good person. He did a lot of bad things. Like, he, made me laugh, and I loved watching his shows growing up. But now it's, like, tainted because now he was not.
Yeah, and then what if you're a human who was in Bill Cosby's life, who he was just nice to, right? He was good to, whatever, didn't do any harm. And then you've got to reconcile those feelings with all these other feelings. There's a lot to unpack.
Oh, yeah.
Lots to unpack there with all that. But yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
But, that goes into that privilege thing again. Like, they had the privilege of knowing him, but not being hurt by him.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So they have a completely different frame of reference. Right? That's hard for us to see, even though we may have liked him and watched him growing up. But it's easier for us to grapple with it because we weren't
there
experiencing him as a kind human, perhaps. So, but yeah, wow, geez, this is like a heavy episode, man. Life's not a crapshoot. Just so you know, we're gonna reach across. After you're done being mad about everything, you're gonna take a deep breath. You're gonna go to phase 2. Phase 2 is reaching across and really loving loving yourself, loving the human next to you, feeling like your voice matters and that you can be heard and that you maybe even have the emotional capacity to hear somebody else.
Yes.
And sit in that space and sit in their feelings after you sat in your own. And then, even if you never talk to somebody across the aisle, you can even have that experience by yourself. You can just kind of feel it out. And then even if you just have that experience all by yourself, to be fair, you're actually making the world a better place, even in your own little space, because you are broadening your perspective. It's going to make you a little bit more compassionate when dealing with others. I got into a car accident in West Virginia last year. I had my kid with me. My kid is trans, and West Virginia's weird, and all these weird people were trying to help us. And I was like, I got the tow truck coming. Just I'm fine, right? And so the tow truck guy gets there, and he's all Trumped out, right? Trump shirt, Trump, all the things, but like he was the safe person, like I got in the front seat of his tow truck with me and my trans kiddo and our dog, like damn near on his lap. And I just knew he was going to take care of us. He wasn't going to hurt us. He wasn't going to harm us. He was going to take us to where we were going to go. He was going to take me away from all those crazy people that were probably trying to abduct me under the guise of helping me and helping me and my kid. But it was just like, and I kind of pointed that out to my kid because, all the crazy Trump stuff was happening. So this was actually probably more than a year ago at this point. I'm losing track of years, but, because my kid, is very anti-Trump. And I was like, just look, like you can, like this guy is a Trump supporter, but I'm like, but he would have taken a bullet for us, in this instance. Like he was like, nope, superhero dude coming in to quote unquote save the day. And he did. And so at least, I thought that was important for my kid to see, like people aren't one note people.
Right.
Like they got a lot of different threads running through them, and one of those threads may be ignorance, but they got a whole lot of other threads of different kinds of experience.
That's very true.
And so like, I always look at people like in threads, right? So like Johnny might have a blue thread and I see a blue thread and like these are 4 other people, but just because Johnny has a blue thread doesn't mean I put Johnny in a blue bucket, because Johnny's got orange and green and purple. And then this other human might have some, some brown and some gold and some pink, so I just see the threads. So like just somebody who's cool with this Jason Aldean song might be standing outside my studio helping me protest, to support boys. Right, to help support LGBTQ kids. So people are complex. They have a lot of different threads, and whatever they may believe or feel about one particular thing, I would say maybe don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Look for the other colors, right? Look for some of these other threads. And the more we fuss at each other, the more they're going to dig into that, whatever that color was, right? Like if that color is green, they're like, oh, they're just going to start to get more green. Some of that green is going to just bleed on over if they don't feel like, if they're using their color of green as their defense mechanism, they're going to build a whole wall of green now. And that's not what we want. We want to help expose their other colors and show how we all have some of those colors overlapping in ourselves. So, sorry, big explanation.
No, people surprise you when you get to know them. Yeah. Because, like you have that like quick bias if someone's like trumped out, right? But you're like, you know what? I feel safe with this person. He's going to get us to safety, and that is all I need, right? Yeah.
And so you never know. So go humans.
Yeah.
We can do this. We can do this.
Go humans.
I mean, if you're not human, you're cool too. I like dogs and other things too, but
that should be a shirt. Go humans. Yay.
See, we had to end on a light note.
Yeah.
I was like, man, we were getting heavy there.
We were. I feel like that should be a universal chant. Go humans.
Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of Star Trek.
That's all right. You're allowed.
Is there anything else you want to promote or add before we end this, as we come to the end of this podcast?
just give it. The only thing I just will just end with, just give yourself a little hug.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, give somebody else a hug. Just love on yourself a little bit. We're all just doing the best we can.
Yeah. And fidget with a crystal. It's
Ah,
like,
yeah.
I love how Lindsay, she has this big chunk of selenite, and she's just been fidgeting with it. And I've just been, well, when I first saw it, it was like on the table. And I was like, oh, it's a crystal type of day, isn't it? Like, protection, healing, but, they can be, a nice source of manifestation or just like a reminder of something. So I thought it was really cool. You had it there with you into this.
I got my rocks in my pocket, and sometimes they come out to play.
Yeah.
Play with rocks, kids.
Play with rocks.
But say no to drugs.
Yes.
Not those rocks.
Not those rocks. Yes. Make sure it's a quartz. Play with the quartz.
Yeah.
Yeah.